Go ahead.
Oh, hey neighbors, Brian, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company. Bill Allan here with Bill Allan World, and we are excited to bring you the pilot episode of Rise and Roll.
Well, really, we did a pilot episode, but it wasn't live. This one's live. We're live on Twitch now to a massive audience of at least, 6,392 people.
They can see
awesome.
The viewers.
Yeah.
Two viewers.
That's for like later when we
right.
repost this on YouTube and people are like, wow, they had a smashing first live stream. So, Brian, we went to Gen Con. We didn't just go. A lot of people went to Gen Con.
True.
Many of you who are watching this later, because we're doing a morning show at a ridiculously early time, many of you might have gone to Gen Con. We went to Gen Con, but we worked Gen Con. We were part of the official, not even part, let's be honest. We were the official crew for Gen Con's official, not one, but two Twitch channels.
I mean, there were some other people there too.
Okay, but to be fair, like when I say we, I mean like we, the LTTV collective,
sure.
like, so, you know, Dave Carafa and Heather and O'Malley, Paul was there. Michael Garbars was the MVP, Michael.
Sure.
Elise,
Elise was there, yeah.
So Marie, she was, so we brought a big crew of people from Chicago to Indy for Gen Con. We worked the crew. And Brian, for those who don't know, there were two stages. There was the little studio where the exhibitors showcased their games. And then there was the big stage,
the main stage,
which is where, live audience was in effect.
For the live streams.
Yeah, much bigger, live streams for role-playing games. But if you had to summarize, what would you say for those who weren't there participating in the way that we were? What would you say was the most thrilling part about being on the crew? Maybe the most exciting part, but also, and then I want to know the flip side. What was the biggest, soul-crushing part of it as well?
I mean, for me, I think I was pretty okay most of the time. I slipped up one time with my little bit of celebrity, oh my gosh, and it was when Matt Colville walked in the door. I was like, holy shit, it's Matt Colville. And he was like, where? Who is it? But I think that was the one time where I was really the whole thing was exciting because I got to meet awesome people. But that was the one time when I was like, oof, this is the big leagues.
And it's funny you mentioned that because when you're working crew, there's kind of a rule, whether it's spoken or unspoken, it depends on who you're working with. But typically there's a rule of etiquette that the crew does not engage with the celebrities.
Sure.
You're civil, but you're not fanboying to the celebrities, right? And so we kind of had to straddle that line. But at the same time, I would say, and I'm not just kissing ass here, but I'm pretty sure that most of the quote unquote celebrities were genuinely cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
That
was the cool thing to see.
Travis, just the whole lot of them, everybody, and some of them we knew from other events, from Satine and Rudy, obviously, and we met B. Dave and a lot of that crew, but just everybody was really genuinely pretty cool.
I was not surprised. I wasn't surprised because I think the community is a small enough community that by and large people are excited to see viewers wherever they can get them, and that they're not they don't have the same bit of celebrity that typical Hollywood celebrities.
Right. I would agree with that, and I think
and it's a more welcoming community in general.
Right, and it's something that I wanted to talk about on a bigger scale was community, because it's not just in regards to the streamers and their interaction with the crew and their audience, because they were genuinely happy, like you said, after every stream, people were lining up for autographs and pictures and stuff, and everybody was very gracious and really cool about it. But I think when we talk about community, Gen Con is, for those who have gone, it's massive. I mean, in terms of gaming conventions, it's just a, I would say, overwhelming event. like the just sheer volume of stuff is pretty massive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it's kind of cool when, 60,000 nerds take over a city.
Sure.
And, like, everywhere you go, you feel like there's a kinship with the people who are around you, whether you're, in the convention center or one of the adjacent hotels, or you're 8 blocks away getting a burger.
Right.
During Gen Con weekend,
Everybody
you see
there,
people, and they're part of your tribe.
I used to live in Indianapolis, and fortunately, I lived there for like 11 months, and the month I didn't live there was August, and so I avoided it. But part of me feels bad for the people in Indianapolis having to put up with all those nerds, and part of me remembers the people in Indianapolis, and maybe they deserve it.
I think
if you're from Indianapolis, I'm sorry you live in a trash fire of a state. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, but I think the way that I mean, to give credit, like I feel like Indianapolis embraces Gen Con, and there are probably a lot of economic factors for that.
Yeah.
Like, everywhere we went, anytime we went out for a meal, was everybody knew. They're like, oh, you guys here for Gen Con, and signs. The businesses had signs, welcome Gen Con. And I mean, there are economic motivations for that, but it still helps you feel kind of like it's a special magical weekend.
That's true.
All right, so we got to work crew, and just so people understand, that was basically no less than a 14-hour day every day.
Right.
And I'm talking 14 hours. That doesn't include the 35-minute commute from our hotel in Lebanon, Indiana.
Yeah.
To Indy.
That was
and then
probably
back.
the largest drawback, was like I didn't really have time. I think I had 1 hour the whole weekend to go see the vendor floor.
Right. And it was that's what we did. We would do rotations, and people would get like a little hour in between streams, and people would run off. Unless you were Paul and O'Malley, then you just disappeared for like 4 hours. But
and then as floor manager, it's just easier to be there the whole time than to come back and like figure out where we left off.
Right.
So,
right. But we met some cool people that we were working with behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
I mean, our
Dave Benson was awesome.
Yeah, Eric Benson was the
Eric
man.
Benson, he was killer.
And he was like the most amazing, like, fun producer to work with.
Lauren over at twitchtv.random Tuesday was really great.
Yeah, she was on the Twitch crew.
They're doing a thing. They're doing Geek Space TV. They're doing a big fundraiser and push for subscribers right now.
Yeah, and like it there were other people kind of floating through the event staff, like the Gen Con event staff.
Yeah. HQ was great.
Like they were all really good to work with. So, but those long days, even though we were crunched, it was brutal, but kind of fun.
But it didn't feel as bad as it probably should have.
Yeah.
Because it was all stuff that we were excited about doing.
Right.
So.
And we had some cool improvisation kind of elements where we were empowered to kind of come up with some creative choices.
Sure.
One of those was early on in the week when Ivan Van Norman ran the Dread Fairy Tales. So, we knew that there was going to be Jenga involved, but we didn't know the scale.
Right.
And then he brings in the giant jumbo, adult version, and it's massive. So that wouldn't work on the normal
regular
gaming
table,
tables.
yeah.
So Brian and I quickly run out and we jack this coffee table that's out in the lobby, thinking like, well, we'll just lift it up on stage, and it's got a marble head. Like
I don't know why you would put a marble tabletop on a.
It was at least 200 pounds.
Bad.
Like I feel like we might have died.
It was
if that fell on anyone's foot.
Yeah.
You would have had like an emergency room trip. But it worked. And it worked well, and it was cool. But yeah, I mean, that whole experience was awesome. All right, let's cut to what was it like to be able, when you did have a break, to be able to hit the show floor? Because we kind of would deviate. We didn't get to like walk the floor together as a big happy family. We kind of had to squat off into little things. But what was your experience like? And then I'll talk about mine, because I got some loot, y'all.
Yeah. I stayed busy. I had an hour to go, and because I only had the hour, like I had a list of things I needed to see.
Yeah.
and I like checked off the list and then ran back to the hall. So it was a little bit tough in terms of I didn't really get to see much, but it's probably better because I didn't have any money. So I don't know. Like, that's
All
the way
right,
it goes.
tell me something that you actually saw, maybe on the show floor, that you were genuinely like interested in, or something that was a surprise, something that you weren't seeking out, but you happened to be walking by and you're like, "This is cool."
A couple of things. So, Keymaster Games is a killer board game company that we met at Origins, actually. And that was one of the things we went to look for when we went back to the floor. But they have 4 games now that the artwork is amazing. They're very like small box games. They're portable. They're between 2 and 6 players. And they're just like a really well put together, like their whole line is very well put together and very well boxed and everything else. So Keymaster Games was huge. And then some of the stuff that was just bonkers that was there was like the giant, I don't know if you saw the giant crane game machine that you had. You could like...
Yeah, what was that all
I
about?
have no idea. I think
Okay.
like there was something in it. I don't know.
And there were a couple of those kind of things.
Yeah, Critical Role did like a in setting booth.
Right.
Not Critical Role, but like they were selling Critical Role merchandise. Yeah.
And then
that
what was
cool.
what was the one like something kittens?
Exploding Kittens?
Yeah.
That was the crane game box.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was kind of like one of those things where everybody, there was like a buzz going around about it, and there was a huge line for it and stuff. And I still don't understand why, but I think it's like sometimes at Gen Con, you know, because that part of Gen Con, we've talked about this before, is like a trade show.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, basically, it's just hundreds of companies coming out with their stuff. And that side of it can be a little overwhelming, where you're like, you walk in this massive room and it's just, it feels like miles of stuff.
I will say
So
that
you
that
have to
was-
do something to get people's attention, right? I mean, that's part of the gig.
I will say that was the biggest surprise I had. Was I thought it would feel more like a trade show.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because I was in the studio the whole time, or the ballroom the whole time, but it didn't. You know, it felt very much like a community rather than an industry getting together.
So, I mean, I went to Gen Con last year, worked on live stream stuff for Maze Arcana, but on a much smaller scale, and then had a lot more free time to
Right.
kind of, you know, shoot video and follow them around all that stuff.
Like 2.
Right. So,
Right.
but point is that like last year I got to genuinely like walk the floor and stuff. This year, you know, when I was able to dip out, I kind of found similar things, but part of me was surprised at how many board games, not role-playing games,
Yeah.
like board games and card-based games I saw. Is that a trend? Is that like, is there a big comeback with that?
Well, first of all, I think yes. But second of all, I think Gen Con isn't an RPG convention. It's a tabletop convention. And I don't think it's ever been an RPG convention in the same way that like GaryCon is an RPG convention, you know.
So when they say the best 4 days in gaming, they
mean
really do
all
mean
gaming. Yeah.
broadly.
Right.
Yeah.
Except probably with the exception of video gaming.
Right.
And I don't know, like, I'm not on their marketing team. I don't know what they mean by that, or if they mean anything by that, or if it's just a slogan. But, yeah, so it's not simply a tabletop RPG convention. It's a holistic tabletop convention. And then there's some like blending. I guess there is some blending with video gaming in terms of like Weave, which has a phone app component. And I think that's...
you have to explain Weave for me, because
I have to get on the phone with the guy who made Weave.
Like, I don't understand.
I don't know what it is, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like a deck of cards, and I guess all the cards have like QC codes on them.
Okay.
And so you scan your deck in, and it like builds your character in your phone app. And then it's from there. It's like just like a role playing game.
Okay.
Right? And so the DM has their own set of cards that they draw, and that's like the challenges they can throw at you.
but it incorporates the phone.
Yeah, so that's where like your character, like they don't put out like a paper like PDF of like your character sheet. Like that's how you organize your character is on the phone app.
Okay.
From my understanding.
Okay.
And we'll try to do some Weave stuff. The folks at Weave were kind enough to give us a copy, and so we'll try to do some Weave stuff for the channel at some point once we get our heads around exactly how it works, which may involve a phone call to the company and say, maybe we'll try to do like a pre-recorded session for one of the weeks coming up.
Yeah.
With the guys from Weave and see if they can give us the once-over.
So that's kind of a good segue into the games that incorporate technology. So, like I said, there was 2 stages that we were involved in terms of the live streaming. The smaller studio was where exhibitors were showcasing their stuff.
Oh, I guess they did like Marvel Puzzle Quest and like
so a lot of them were just straight up board games or card-based games or whatever, but some of them were included either an integration of software or apps, or were completely app-based.
Yeah.
One of those was Sirenscape, who, if you play role-playing games and you don't know what Sirenscape is, it's basically, it allows you to become the DJ.
It's like a randomized soundtrack builder.
Yes, but it's more than just like, here's a bunch of music and sound effects. It's an in-app situation, so it makes it easy, right? Because I could sit at a laptop as the DM and run my music and my sound effects, but then at a certain point that might be distracting from me being the narrator.
And at some point, at what point do you become a DJ that's also DMing instead of a DM that's also DJing?
Right. So what Sirenscape does is it provides you with a user interface that is that just kind of facilitates that so that you can concentrate on DMing or running your game, whatever game you're playing, and then, kind of include that. So what was cool is that we got a $20 gift card for, and Ben over at Sirenscape, I met him last year at Gen Con. He actually did the live soundtracking for Maze Arcana's game. So I was on audio, he was doing that. It was like a jam. It was like 2 DJs just laying it down. So we're gonna try that out.
Two of the nerdiest DJs.
Yeah. And this might show up in, season 3 of The Bard's Tale.
Yeah, or the season 2 finale.
Yes.
If we can figure it out.
But, the other thing that I got was this nice dice bag from Sirenscape. Now, it didn't come with any dice in it, so I'll get to that. But while walking the floor, Brian, I walked past Chessex, who you know because you
We're a distributor for him.
Yeah, you're a distributor for him. And I said, I don't need any more dice because I've been playing D&D for so long that I donate my old dice to like the game store for kids. I don't need any more dice, but the bowl of dice where you could just dip a mug in and just, I was like
get a pound of dice.
It's calling to me. Yeah. But I asked the guy, I'm like, what if I just don't want random stuff? What if I want one, he's like, pick out whatever you want. Anything from that bowl, just cram it into a coffee mug. So I did. And it was like a moderate cramming. He's like, no, dude. He's like, shake it up. He's like, jam it in there. I'm like, okay, they're trying to unload stuff.
Right. They're trying to get rid of old product.
So, Brian, I have 3 pounds of mostly D4s.
Oh, for your...
for my game.
For residual.
Yes. And then Heather wanted to pick up some other dice, some D10s. But in this dice bag, and this was not from the economy thing, so I'll make sure I mention that. So I pick up all these dice, and it's a ridiculous amount, as you could see. Some D10s in there. I thought maybe I'd play Vampire and maybe need some D10s. We'll see. But a lot of D4s. Yes,
for whatever
it's
reason,
dots,
it was 6s, but...
dots and D10s. So then, walking around a little further, I come across another company. I'm stalling because I can't remember the damn name of the company now. Oh, it's killing me. I'll find out and then I'll post it somewhere. They have these, all these weird dice that I've never seen. So I bought
Cowboy Jesus dice.
Yeah, I bought a D14, a D16, and a D3. So I wanted to demonstrate. We don't have an over-the-shoulder camera shot, so I'm going to have to just explain this very graphically to you. So the D16 I don't know why I would ever need this, but it's pretty awesome, right?
Somebody will build a system for D16s, like somebody built a system for D4s.
Right.
Like,
Well, I mean, I feel like the D16 could be, some epic thing that you add into. Yeah, right. So like instead of your weapon doing a D8, if you roll whatever, you get to roll the D16, just randomize it more, whatever. But the D14, now this is cool because on the D14 are also days of the week.
oh, that's awesome.
So, and the way the guy described this to
one of your
me,
players is like, "What day is it?" You're like, "I don't know. It's
Yes.
Wednesday." Shut up.
yes.
Like-
So, and he gave me a very concrete example. He's like, say a character succumbs to a disease or a poison or whatever, you could roll the D14. And if you roll a 14, it says Sunday, and that would mean week 2. So in other words, it's got 2 weeks of days on it. And then, 1 through 7 is
That's
obviously
cool.
first week, 8 through 14, second week. So you can actually come up with things. Or just, any plot device. Like,
Right.
oh, this fine noble is not available to speak with you until Sunday the
7 days
7th,
from now, yeah. And that's interesting because one of the things about D&D that's always been, they've kind of talked about it in 5th edition as an optional rule set, but the notion of lingering illnesses and lingering like injuries,
Yes.
that's a cool concept that I think gets kind of hand waved away from a setting with healing magic. Like,
Yes.
how long does it take you to heal your broken leg? 6 seconds.
Right.
But it doesn't have to, right? And this gives DMs a lot more options to be like, look, like you were brought back via a revivify spell. It takes you 11 days. You'll be fine next Thursday because being dead sucks.
Right.
Like,
Or just, even, I agree with you on that, and I think even just leveling the playing field. I have a problem with DMs who are punitive or adversarial, but if you're, like you said, if you
there's
have a
a
party
reason
that's
for it,
very
yeah.
stacked, and they're able to just survive everything, and you want to create a challenge, you're not trying to defeat them, but you want to create a challenge.
Right.
One of those ways could be just, simple things like a disease that, doesn't like hurt them, but maybe they suffer exhaustion for, 7 days.
Till Sunday,
Wow, I keep
yeah.
rolling a 7. It's weird. The last of the special weird dice is a D3. So it's got 1, 2, and 3, but it also has these letters, R, P, and S. And I'm like, what is it? He goes, rock, paper, scissors. I was like, that's awesome. So
that's huge for LARPers.
yeah. So here's your, I roll the 3, S. Now you roll, Brian. Let's see if you can beat my scissors.
No,
it's a tie.
We Rochambeau'd. P.
Paper.
I beat you.
You defeated me. So, but these were kind of the special dice, and I again, it kills me that I can't remember the name of the company. And the salesman guy, I mean, I bought 3 dice, so it's not like I bought like $80 worth of merch, but he genuinely spent 10 minutes with me,
For 3
like
dice. Wow.
explaining the mechanics too, like not
That's
just
cool.
options for how to use them, but literally how they make these dice and why they're different. Because
cool.
they had this bold claim on the sign that was like, our dice are better. And I was like, come on. And he's like, no, really, because we don't tumble them. And he showed me, like, you could see on the 1, there's like a little marred piece. So basically, they cut these right off, like after they're manufactured, they cut them right off, and then they don't tumble them. I don't know what dice tumbling does to dice, but...
My guess is it like, because it's before they fully cool, right?
Right.
So like, if this is like aesthetically perfect,
Yeah.
it means that like the weight is not necessarily right.
Yes.
And so the tumbling takes a little bit of the removes a little bit of the weight.
Right, and he basically said if you actually roll, wow, I just dropped my amazing.
Gone to
die.
the abyss.
Yep, I get disadvantage on the next roll. So it basically
very
just
proud
makes
of
them more randomized, which I thought was kind of cool.
Speaking of dice, and we'll get back to Gen Con in a second. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast. I mean, I guess thank me because I won the raffle, but they sent me this nice coffee mug and this nice Tomb of Annihilation dice bag and some Dungeons and Dragons dice with a nice legible D20 that's nice and large and a little bit translucent, and I can see the numbers because I'm old. But thanks for that.
Those are pretty sweet.
Those are sweet dice. Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah,
But
and the mug is obviously
amazing.
instilling much jealousy in me.
That's true.
Just random side note, at the very end of Gen Con, while we were getting ready to leave, we were saying our goodbyes to some friends, to Satine and Rudy, and then Mercedes Lackey was just hanging out, so she signed an autograph. Yay! It's kind of cool to see, a really famous author who was also a Chicago person at Gen Con, just chilling.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sirenscape. We
dice.
stopped by Mantic Games because Mantic Games had just recently, done their Kickstarter for their terrain crates. And I was like looking at them, and I have a similar thing with terrain and minis as I do with dice. So I'm like,
well, or more.
Yeah,
you might
or more.
be even more psychotic with terrain and minis.
yeah. So I'm like, oh, they're so cool, they're so detailed. Then I'm looking at the little boxes, and then the guy's like, well, we do have these larger full scale things, blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh yeah, but it's so expensive, back and forth. And then he's like, well, we do have a few of the Kickstarter crates.
Ooh.
And they're huge, right? And I was like, well, how much are those? He's like, $100 each. They have 3 different things, right? And I'm like looking at them, and
Just before you admit to purchasing anything, your wife's not going to watch this, right?
no, she
Okay,
never watches
perfect.
anything.
We're good.
So I pony up for the $100 because I'm like, it's like 120 pieces of terrain for $100. I'm like, that's pretty good, right? Like, you couldn't even 3D print
No, you
that
couldn't
much
print it
stuff
that cheap.
for that cheap. So I pony up, right? And then Heather's with me, and we're talking about like how this is going to be so awesome on the shows and how we're going to use this. And they're like, "Oh, you guys do a channel?" I'm like, "Yeah, and D&D with high school students." And so, long
D&D
story
with high school
short,
students and 11,600 subscribers.
yeah. So, long story short, I was like, yeah, we're totally open for sponsors, and if you guys want to donate, we'll do a shout out, unboxing videos. He goes, look, I'll make a deal with you. Buy another box, and I'll throw in the 3rd box for free.
you
So
got
Brian, I'm a sucker.
$300
I'm a sucker for a
prices,
deal.
yeah.
So I buy the 2nd box. He throws in the 3rd.
33% off. That's a big deal.
But wait, there's more. Just
Ooh.
like a commercial. Then he picks some other game from their line and throws that in. So I got basically for $200, I got $300 Kickstarter dollars worth of stuff, which is actually like $600 worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And another game on top of that
That's
was worth $50.
huge.
So I think
This
we
is
did well.
Mantic?
This is Mantic Games. So we're gonna open those up, and we'll have those things on the table for Bard's Tale, and
that'd
there's
be
just
cool.
a lot of cool terrain that, some of it's some stuff that I sort of have that maybe I made, but it's kind of cool to have more of it,
Right.
To round out the
Right.
collection. So that was cool. There was another company that who made the cereal game?
I don't know, but that was awesome, and I'm jealous that I didn't get a box of Blueberry.
Yes. No, I can't just search cereal board game because that
There
won't
are
work.
many, apparently. It's probably like
Monster
cereals.
Crunch.
Monster Crunch.
Yes, Monster Crunch. That was it.
Do you suppose that game has a lot of crunch to it?
I bet it does. Who made? Oh, Big G. That's it. Now, why did we go to Big G? Because they had the Bob Ross game.
Oh, they had the Bob Ross game. Okay.
So Heather,
That's
who's
why
an
Heather went to
artist,
Big G.
Heather's like, I gotta go see the Bob Ross game. So we go to the Bob Ross table, and we're like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, all right, let's go by. And then he's like, well, wait, you guys want to try another game? We have Monster Crunch. And I'm like, yeah, I'm more of an RPG guy.
Right.
He's like, just give it a try. Come on. If you like it, you could buy it, and we're giving away free boxes of cereal. So
Free boxes of
stupid me
cereal.
listens to Heather, because Heather's like, oh, cereal. So we sit down and we play this game, and Brian, it was raging fun.
Was it?
Like,
That's awesome.
and I'm not a big board game person, but it was fun. Like, we had a
And
blast.
it's nice to see games that are based off gimmicks that are still like fun to play.
Yes. So we got a box of Blueberry, and like, basically Heather and the kids like killed the box, within an hour.
Before they got it back to the studio.
But I
share
figured
with
that
the
was,
rest of
that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And like, we could play it on initiative and, just
Yeah,
kind of demo
sure.
it. But I think it Gen Con was, I didn't go crazy. I mean, it might sound like I went crazy because I bought $200 worth of train. But I think considering how much I
But
could
you got $600.
like, I didn't buy any Dwarven Forge stuff. No offense, Dwarven Forge, I love you, but I just didn't. I bought a couple minis.
Right.
Did I buy more than a couple minis?
I don't know. We bought a box of Guild Ball Falconers. We got a box of those because here's the thing. Guild Ball has the best sculpts in miniatures today.
Yeah.
But the game is so weird, and I've not played it, so I can't say this with any authority.
Right.
But the idea of fantasy meets football is such a strange concept to me.
Yeah.
That it's hard for me to believe that it's anything but the weirdest game alive, and that its miniatures should be cannibalized for better purposes.
Right. Well, I mean, I remember Blood Bowl when it first came
Right.
out. Now they have like newer editions of it, but kind of same thing. Like,
Right.
okay, so it combines sports and strategy and wargaming with, but I agree with you. And in other installments, we'll talk about cannibalizing stuff from other
Right,
games
right.
because while I was in Europe, I bought things that definitely weren't just RPG based. That where I was like totally like, I'm going to use this for D&D.
Solely for D&D, yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of one of those things though.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that people can do and
And no,
sometimes do.
it's no offense to the folks at Guild Ball. I mean, they make killer miniatures. And maybe their game is fun, and they can prove me wrong. And if they want to do an interview with us and tell us about
Yes.
the merits of Guild Ball, more power to them. But,
Right.
I just have trouble conceptualizing a world where sports people have sports. Let them keep them. I
Yes.
don't know why we're trying to cross that bridge, but
Okay, so just to circle back, because a while ago, you had mentioned, meeting Colville was like kind of a celebrity geek out moment.
yeah.
For me, I see this old man walking around in a black
yeah.
suit and a hat, and he like walks up to the owner, two of the owners of Gen Con, and like shakes hand and talks to him, and then he's
Right.
walking away. I'm like, who? God, why is that guy familiar?
Right.
Then I find out it's Merle Rasmussen, who's the inventor of Top Secret, which is one of my favoriteest games from the TSR days, and it was the ultimate game of espionage
Sure.
and intrigue and stuff. And it was way ahead of its time, like just way ahead of its
Way
time.
ahead of my time too. I have
Yeah.
no idea about this game.
But so I like run up to him and I totally fanboy him and I tell him, that like I have so many fond memories and me and my friends played Top Secret for thousands of hours, all this stuff. Nicest guy on the planet. Like I proceed to have like maybe a 25-minute conversation with him where I get caught up on like his entire backstory and everything. But now he's making the rounds because they've launched a new Top Secret. So I'm excited and I'm going to get my hands on it one way or the other because we should play it because it's awesome.
Do we really need a new Top Secret?
Well, here's the thing. We do because somewhere in the 90s, I sold all of my old games that I didn't, I'm an idiot. So I sold like all these games. Brian, I had the Kara Tour box set. I had Gamma World. I had all these games, and I sold them because I was like, I'll never play these games. Stupid. Don't sell your games, people. So
We're
yeah.
not advising you to hoard things.
Right,
Please
right.
don't
Be a
take
hoarder,
that as an
but-
acknowledgement of the merits of hoarding.
But I think like I think we do, and here's why. Because when I'm talking to Merle, the '80s Top Secret was basically like Cold War, right?
Sure.
So it was James Bond
I
and
guess
all
it's
those.
a very different,
Yes,
conceptually, it's a very different game.
right. And now it's kind of a broader base because he said he's like the reason why we came out with a new one was because we wanted to acknowledge kind of the shifting political landscape in the
Sure.
world. So, he's talking about like the whole element of terrorism and different extremist countries and stuff and extremist groups, but then also kind of the reemerging Cold War,
Right.
what's going on
Sensation.
with North Korea and
Right.
whether or not Russia's an ally or an enemy. So I'm like, it is a rich political landscape,
true.
and it might be a great time for a new top secret.
For a new top secret.
So we'll find out if I can get my hands on a copy of that.
Cool.
In the pilot episode, Brian, we talked briefly about Vampire 5 V5. It has since come out. It looks like a gorgeous book.
Sure.
I looked it over. I didn't buy it, but I looked it over. It looks like an incredibly well-made book. But when we ask, do we need another vampire? The supporters would say yes, because what this version does is it continues the narrative. It provides a few new mechanics to make the experience more immersive and more gritty and realistic, and make it more about survival horror, because now it's harder to be a vampire effectively with some of the new mechanics.
Okay.
The struggle and the suffering, in other words, you're not just like a dark superhero, you're a vampire,
Right.
and like bad things happen when you don't get blood.
Sure.
So I'm on the fence, though. I'm on the fence because there's a part of me who, the part that started playing Vampire originally back in '93, who's like, yeah, like vampire. And then there's another part that's like, do we need another vampire?
Are you sure that other part isn't like my vampire versus the new kid's vampire, though? That's my question, is like, is it a matter of like, it's just something we don't need, or is it a matter of like, that's not real vampire because I play real vampire? Like, is this just Edition Wars rearing its head through like a different lens, or
Maybe.
because I felt that way about 3.5 for D&D for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, and then, the joke was I'm not buying into a new system until the ghost of Gary Gygax comes and takes my books away.
Right.
And then you play 5th Ed once and you say, oh, well, shit, it's better. You
Yeah.
know, like, I don't know. It's tough to know without playing the system. I think it's, from a marketing standpoint, it's silly not to put out a new edition of a game in the golden age of gaming that we're currently in.
Right.
Like, with 5th edition D&D, V5 Vampire, 2nd edition Pathfinder, 9th edition Cthulhu. Like,
Are they up to 9? I think they're at 7. But
are they at 7?
But
I don't.
That's still a
But
lot.
the point
That's
is
a
still
lot.
valid.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those situations where, like, from a marketing perspective alone, when one of the big games puts out a new edition, it makes sense to kind of follow suit.
Yeah.
Right? And that's aside from mechanical issues, whatever. Like, I think 5th edition was a very, from a player-based standpoint, a very needed update to 4th.
Yeah.
Because there was such a bad reaction to 4th, warranted or not. I think 4th edition had a lot of its own problems, but I don't think it is. I don't think its reputation is earned.
Right, and there are people who are younger that
Who started on 4th
who
edition.
started on 4th and still love it and still
Right.
play it. So it's kind of interesting to see, some of those people
Right.
are like, I'm not buying into 5th.
Right.
And
But from
part
a
of it's an
player-
economic thing, like
Right.
because they spent, $800. I mean, 4th edition put out a prolific
Well,
amount
they
of
took their
books.
cues from 3rd edition, where there were 3 books every month, 3
Right.
to 4 books every month, and it was expensive, and they were $40 a piece off the front of it, and it's a costly way to do business. And I think Wizards is really focused now on putting out 4 books a year that are quality content, and really focusing on engaging the player base instead of engaging their wallets.
Yeah.
And I think if other publishers are going to follow suit, if Pelgrane's going to follow suit, if World of Darkness is going to follow suit, and that's the approach they're going to take to new editions, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
If the object of the new edition is to put out new content with more streamlined rules so that they can engage more players, put out 10 editions. They're all needed.
Mm-hmm.
If it's growing the player base, it's growing the player base.
When you talk about player base, because we have to wrap up in a couple minutes, but while walking the Gen Con floor, I happened past the Pathfinder wing. Holy,
It's huge.
Holy wow,
Yeah.
dude! I mean, I knew, but I didn't know.
Right.
Like, Pathfinder Society just, huge amount of space for their
Organized play is it's a large.
and the lines, people
Yeah,
in
people wait
line
in line,
picking up
yeah.
the. I mean, there is there is a whole thing going on, man, and it's
And this isn't the first time they've done it. Like Wizards of the Coast used to do like ranked role playing in the early 90s where like you'd be handed a character sheet and you'd have to like role play out the sheet. And it was like ranked regionally, right?
Yeah.
Like Greg was the number 2 paladin in the Midwest or
Right.
whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So the idea of like organized play as a system. I mean, World of Darkness has been doing it since the onset of World of Darkness. You know,
Yeah.
like camp games are the rarity.
Right.
Like, most games are in an org, and so it's interesting to see 5th edition take a lot of cues from the LARPs, like organized play, like downtime activities, like some of these other aspects, and it'll be interesting to see where it leads, especially if that's what's engaging the player base.
right.
Right? Like you go to conventions that aren't like tabletop branded conventions, and if you try to run a table that's not, if you try to run a D&D table that's not Adventures League, you won't fill your table.
Yeah.
This is not going to happen because there's
No,
no
I
like
think there's-
outside incentive to do that.
We saw some differtions though with smaller conventions like GaryCon.
Sure,
where-
GaryCon was huge
because
Yeah.
they're more
because
RPG
everything
focused.
is focused on RPGs.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't see the open gaming floors at Gen Con, but my guess is like anyone trying to run D&D that wasn't in the Adventures League room
or a celebrity.
or a
yeah.
celebrity was having trouble filling tables.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
if there's not some external draw.
I was just blown away by how many
Yeah.
people were participating, and all weekend long, dude. Like it didn't matter if it was morning, afternoon, night. Like those places were packed. It was
Well,
just
it's like
crazy.
we went to D8 Summit in, April, I think.
Yeah.
And they ran an epic for 39 tables. Like there were 39 full tables for a tiny event in like Western Illinois. You know, like a
Yeah.
really small fundraiser event for pads. You know, like,
But it was packed.
but it was packed. There were people up from Atlanta. There were people in from, the East Coast. Like it was huge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. Well, we're out of time,
It's
so
true.
thank you for tuning in live to all 655,000 of you that tuned in live. Thank you so much for tuning into our first live stream. And if you're watching this on YouTube later, thank you for watching. And we will be back every Monday morning, unless I have mono again, or
I mean, I could have mono too.
that's true. We didn't make out, but just to be clear, thank you for tuning in to Rise and Roll. And if you have any ideas for topics or any questions, go ahead and just send us a message on the Initiative Coffee Company Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitch. Just find Initiative Coffee Company somewhere, send an email, and let us know if you have any ideas or topics. Or if you just want to like vent, and you guys suck. You don't know what
Yeah,
you're
if
talking
we're
about.
terrible, tell us we're terrible.
Yeah, that's fine too.
That's fine.
But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Rise and Roll.